bonus because of the COVID restrictions. If you've seen this, I couldn't help think about that when watching the movie. But anyway, so I want to shift over to our other guest also, and I was thinking in relation to the Manifest movie about. Yeah, maybe you can also tell a little bit, like Kajsa did, about the background of the movie, but also I was quite struck by it because personally I started working at the Danish Royal Academy of Arts in Copenhagen at the same time as your article came out in Kunstkritik, which is, I don't know if it's like the precursor or if it was made at the same time as the film Manifest. But in that piece, you also kind of explore in depth the architectural, but also like educational changes of this shift of location for the Art Academy in Oslo. And yeah, one thing you touch upon, for example, is artistic research as kind of a new ultimate horizon of art education institutions. And so I'm wondering also about your own position in relation to the work you have done as a professor at the academy, and how you see, yeah, how you yourself maybe engage in this type of building parallel institutions or not. But please, also if you want to tell a little bit more about the background. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Kristoffer. Nice to be here with you, even if it's virtual. I mean, the background is simple because I used to teach all the time since I left the academy myself, and I have seen this change in the art educational institutions in the last 20 years, which was what this article was about. And to me, it has been very rapidly changing and very clearly changing from this kind of, on the one hand, elitist, but at the same time incredibly free for those who were within somehow the academy, to this situation where we're more and more monitored and more measured in a way. So for me, it was writing this text in Kunstkritik was like a parallel work to actually developing the film. Yeah, I think I think for me as a teacher and as a professor in this institution, I mean what I'm showing in the film is actually the Art Academy in Bergen, which is Norway's second biggest city, and which is completely new, was newly built for this kind of merged art educational institutions. But what I saw when I wrote this article was that this actually happened everywhere in the north or in Scandinavia, and that they built new buildings. They merged different educations into one kind of entity, or they merged it with the university, and they introduced measurement or various requirements on every level of the institution. So it has happened very parallelly in all the Nordic countries, maybe except for Denmark actually. And I think we all feel the kind of pressure from it, both students and teachers and even the administration.
I mean, the film, I mean, takes this turn, of course, towards more and more seemingly absurd. I don't know if they're really absurd, but they become it becomes more obvious. Also the fictional elements, but this line from the cleaning lady / principal or rector of the, you know, the only position in the Art Academy today is to be a criminal. So I'm wondering, like, do you kind of agree on that? A strategy of resistance is to cannibalize the institutions, and is this the only option, or are there more kind of, let's say, more strategic or long-term perspectives from within to change, or is that the condition we're condemned to work in, so to speak?
I don't know. This quote from the rector is actually taken from Fred Moten and his university and the undercommons. So it's his kind of writing. But I think I have the feeling that more and more we see that it's that what she says is true somehow, that there is actually no outside. It's very hard to make your own school outside of these systems. And if you want to somehow have support, financial support, you need to also have all this kind of quality assurance that you somehow are imposed from above. If you want to make completely your own school, you can do it, but then where do you get the money from? Then maybe the students have to pay. So I think it's either for the rich, or you have to somehow obey. So I think that's actually more or less true the way I see it now. I mean, even these kind of preparatory schools that used to kind of experiment more are somehow forced into systems that are similar to what we are having. So I don't know. I mean, you teach yourself. What do you think?
I actually don't teach, but it's a long story. Okay, but we shouldn't get off too much from our tangent on the art schools. I could speak forever also about the Royal Academy in Copenhagen, and also architecturally how opposite it is to what you described. But I think there's an audience also that might have questions that I want to let in, but also maybe, you know, to strike the link back to Kajsa's work also. Like, I think there's an interesting, let's say, contrast of privilege and what agency you have within this kind of structures, because that's what's different, at least in most of the cases that we see in your film, Kajsa. That's what kind of my initial question to think about. Yeah, the position from which you can actually, you know, are subsumed into this type of optimization regimes. But maybe, you know, we should actually let the audience in, and we could come back to this question unless there aren't that many comments and questions, but I hope there are. So is there? Yes.
Hi, Anne. Hi, Kajsa. Really amazing to have you both with us remotely. Do you hear me?
If you like, you can stand here.
Okay. Hello.
They are actually kind of there.
Yes. One question for Anne. What I find so interesting, I mean, you created a manifesto, and then I think the intertitles you put in suggest that or support that very much. And there's this counter vision and this subversion you perform there, but you also build in a bit of a skepticism or maybe irony, and then it's like that cliche of dealing with the wool as a cliche of feminist art, or so you would not otherwise allow yourself to put in, I suppose. So I'm curious and if that is like, it's your artwork, but also I suppose that you involved all your students. These are not actors. I mean, they're actors, but I mean, they're the real art students. And so I suppose you could say if I'm mistaken. So what was that process of scripting it? To what extent they were involved also in these scenes you create? And am I right with this, also this skepticism that you build in there, this little notes of irony that also, yeah, maybe speak against the manifesto, or is that just for you a complete a vision, and it shall be like this in all our futures? Exactly.
Yeah, we should all do wool all the time. Thank you. I mean, I'm happy that you noticed this little irony, but because of course, in all these historical manifestos throughout art history, and all these pockets of freedom, you could say that artists or people built for themselves, there is also this kind of insider problem, which I think they have here as well. And I cannot really imagine how they would go on with this kind of school in the school without really including more people, without other people knowing, etc. So I think it's nice that you observe some irony there. I mean, how I worked with it, I actually I had 2 workshops. First one where we discussed experimental art education or independent art education, and where I wanted the students to contribute to the script, but then they actually decided in the course to make their own course. So they refused to take part in my script workshop, but that was okay. I mean, that was nice also. And then we made another one where we together built this kitchen unit, which has this kind of threefold status. It is both a prop and a sculpture and a kitchen. So it's now in use in Bergen, in this art academy in Bergen, but secretly, because actually the situation is that they don't have a kitchen and they need a kitchen. So that's actually working exactly as it is in the film. And the students in the film are former students, because I think it's a bit hard to work with, to have these double relationships, that people are students, my students, but they're also my actors in my film. So actually I avoided that by working with people whom I used to teach before, but who are now artists. Yeah, I think it's always a bit challenging to include students in my projects, because the kind of openness that I try to maintain within workshops, for example, is hard. It's hard to keep when you also have a lot of ambitions for your work. So I actually don't do that so much. Yeah, thank you.
More questions from the audience? I don't know how much time we have now, but speaking of optimization, but yeah, still some time. Yeah. And you can ask it from there, or you can come up here if you like.
I'll ask it from here if it's okay. I have a question, Kajsa, about the terrifying MTM executive whom you interviewed, and I was most struck at the moment when he was asked whether this would also, or what it wouldn't work for. Right. And he starts talking about, he starts talking about design, and then he sort of opens it out to creative work, creative labor. Mm-hmm. And then he says, but of course we have some ideas about that too. And so I wonder whether you could talk a little bit about the way in which MTM seems to be, it's because it's so focused on movement, that it is somewhat backward looking in terms of what work means, right? That it's mechanical work, it's industrial work, it's work in factories and factory spaces, but increasingly those jobs, and Jeff Bezos would love it if he could just have robots in his warehouses, right? And not have to deal with actual people who need potty breaks. So increasingly the work is being sort of roboticized through humans, but humans are of course doing more sort of service work, not necessarily sort of creative work or intellectual work, but service work. And so I wonder whether this kind of measurement focus will become outdated, or whether you got the sense that there really are ideas about how to take MTM into sort of the future of work. Basically, I have a question about the future of work.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that's that. I mean, I am in no way an expert in this, but my sense when I was doing this, because I felt like, I mean, it's 10 years or something since, and it was at this time, you know, when all these stories came out, for instance, about the Amazon and well, the UPS, and I can just imagine how delivery services has gotten so much worse since then, and it's almost like, you know, then it was really shocking, and the factories, the Foxconn factory, of course, and all the factories in China, and all these reports about labor. But since then, I feel like it's almost normalized. And also at that time, it was also this process, of course, of moving it into other sectors. So the school, for instance, or the university, how to optimize universities, but also how to optimize working with elderly. There were all these reports, at least here, or like reported on that, or should say, like people working with in elderly homes would have to weigh the diapers, in order to kind of measure how much, I don't know, someone would pee in a day in order to save like the amount of diapers, or not having to change as often. So I think that was in a way already happening. But yeah, I certainly hope that it's not the future, obviously. But it really seemed that they did have ideas in a way of how to implement this in even broader, in a broader field, in a way. Yeah, I was also thinking about that with the resistance, because like obviously I was also interested, an entry point into this was also the relationship to film somehow, and the fact that when film was initially possible, it was immediately used in a way to study movement, and hence a movement time measurement, pretty quickly it was used as a way to optimize labor. But there was also this other interest at the time, where this is why these archive films in the beginning are there, because simultaneously to this like wish of optimizing labor, there was also this interest in a way uncontrolled movements, or bodies that wouldn't sort of function or look according to the norm. And I was sort of I was thinking also about that, the sort of uncontrolled movement as a kind of resistance, and I don't know, I think that was something I was kind of trying to get to, although I feel like these bodies are still made very vulnerable within this film, unfortunately. I think I would have sort of done it differently today, but sorry, long answer. Maybe I keep coming off track.
No, that's okay. I think we would have time for one last question. Yeah. Is there? Okay. Do that, and then I can.
Hi, thank you both. My question is, I was thinking in regards to both of your films that another keyword we could use here instead of optimization would be micromanagement. And I was just thinking if you have any comments about COVID and working from home and how it has, because I feel like both institutions and universities and also work with the working from home situation has been has shifted, has changed, to some extent. I would say for work, I feel like some people have reclaimed their time more because they are not in the office, they can do laundry while being in a useless whatever meeting. So, but at the same time, I feel what has happened is we have become more individualized. And so, for instance, as it was shown in the manifesto, one of the things that people appreciated in a sense was the sense of community and collective, and with the working from home, that has changed, obviously. So yeah, I was thinking if you have any comments on that. Thank you.
Should I try Kajsa first? Or I don't know. I think I have also this very double relationship to that development, or this kind of way people now have the opportunity to not meet, because I feel definitely that it's so important to meet other people. And I got almost a bit ill from COVID. I mean, psychologically, to not having to go to places and meet people. And I feel now, when it's more and more possible to just say, let's do it from home, or let's let's do this whole conference from home, let's not travel. I mean, there are a lot of great things about not traveling, but I feel also that it's almost not real for me. So personally, I have big problems with how this is developing. And maybe I'm also very pessimist, but I have the feeling that any possible change that could have been, you know, liberating or could have somehow freed up people's time is immediately taken back or co-opted again in another way. I don't know, Kajsa, what you feel, because maybe I feel the same as the questionnaire, that actually it's very hard to foresee how this is going to change our way of thinking about work and also thinking about the social.
Yeah, I was thinking also precisely about, in a way, as one example would be the university, because I think it's been so clear how difficult, you know, how difficult it is just to learn, you know, through, or how much of that is about sort of meeting others and create, you know, making things together. And I think a lot of like students have suffered really hard from that, and yeah, just not being able to see the whole, you know, to see responses, or it's just very different when you sort of sense other bodies. So I think that, yeah, that's a good example about, I mean, it could be so for us then, who doesn't have to or didn't have to go out and, you know, risk being infected, but could actually work from home, which in a way is a privilege to begin with. But still, I think, you know, it seems like a good idea, or it seemed like a good idea sometimes for me, but I really do think it's just difficult to know. But I think it's yeah, it doesn't yeah, I don't know, like, I think it just doesn't help sort of the learning and sharing processes at all.
It's an ironic kind of concluding point because I think we have to wrap up, but the fact that you were efficiently organized online to be here with us, and we have enjoyed together to see yeah, your films and the other films physically here, and unfortunately we'll have run out of time for this session. So thank you again so much for being here, and thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.